I want to focus on, briefly, one verse, the arguably most well-known verse and command within our Torah portion. When we're given the instructions to build the tabernacle, we're told, "Vasu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." Make for me a mikdash, make for me a sanctuary, and then I will dwell among them. We often, as I suggested this morning during our Parsha study, during Torah talk, we often translate that vav as a before and after, a consequence of our actions. If you build this sanctuary, I will dwell among you as a result. But vav can also mean but. If we retranslate this verse this way, what God is saying, you should make this sanctuary. You should strive to see not a mishkan, the Torah says. It doesn't say vesu li mishkan, make for me a tabernacle. But vesu li mikdash, make for me a place in which God's kedusha, right, the same root mikdash, God's holiness can be seen in everyone and in everything. And even if you don't, even if you fail as humanity, even if you try to build structures that actually are antithetical to that at times demean other people, at times ridicule others, at times suggest that each human is not. Still, but even in that sense, shachanti b'tocham, even then I will dwell amongst you, and my presence will still be in each and every one of you. And that is further defined, further emphasized by what our Bat Mitzvah taught us and told us, that we're each commanded in our special Mafta reading to give the same exact amount in this Shabbat Shekalim reading. And it specifically says that no one should give greater, no one should give less, singling out that the rich aren't prioritized, the poor aren't separated and pushed aside. But everybody matters, and everyone is equal. I bring that up because this Shabbat, we join with synagogues all throughout North America in participating in the HIAS Refugee Shabbat. And at 1 o'clock today, after Kiddush, we'll have Cindy Grossman and Michael Goldman, two attorneys in our congregation, share with us the work that they've been doing to help immigrants in this country stay in this country as it becomes increasingly harder after policy and executive order after executive order to do so. Because last Shabbat, in Parshat Mishpatim, when we received this batch of laws, the first batch of laws after the Ten Commandments, some of which there was this cognitive dissonance because these laws didn't make sense, they didn't add up, they didn't connect at all, but in the center of all these laws is the law, the commandment, the obligation, and the responsibility that is mentioned more times in the Torah than any other, to love the immigrant and sojourner. We are told, because you were once a stranger. When? Just 2 parshiot before that. Think about that. We were told, we experienced in Parshat Beshalach what it was like to be strangers in a strange land and finally be freed. And 2 weeks later, we already need a reminder that we were once in that place of vulnerability. And so too, we must not oppress. We must love those who are different, those who are also in the place of vulnerability. Love the immigrant, the stranger, the sojourner. At the root of the Torah, mentioned more times than any other obligation, not to connect and pray to God, not to wear talit and tefillin, not to keep kosher, not to keep Shabbat, but to love the stranger. And so at 1 o'clock today, I want to invite you in our chapel to talk more about how to keep that at the root and be the essence of who we are. And we're stuck in this period of time where we may be commanded, vasu li'mikdash, to build sanctuaries, buildings, institutions that emphasize that, and yet policies are being put in place that seem to be antithetical to the idea of loving the stranger. It was announced just this week, actually, that the first new ICE contract was contracted a 15-minute drive from here, Delaney Hall in Newark. Room for 1,500 ICE detainees, 8.5 miles away. And we are commanded to respond, v'shachanti b'tocham, that God's kedusha, God's holiness, God's presence remains in each of us. No matter what policies try to demean one individual, try to suggest that some are less than, or less holy than, or less human than, we each give the same amount ultimately. No more, no less. And so may we be equally inspired, as our bar mitzvah inspired us, to remember that if we each are meant to give the same amount, then we cannot be apathetic when policies are put in place that suggest otherwise, that dehumanize, demean another. Let us build true sanctuaries, a true society that celebrates the kedusha of each person. And remember, the shachanti b'tocham, that God dwells in each and every one of us. Amen.